The day I buried Michael, the sky wept. Rain slid down my coat, soaking my bones. I stood alone beside the dark, silent grave. The others had left before the service ended. My family had promised to be here today. They never even booked their flights to attend. Michael deserved more than an empty, quiet farewell. He was the love of my entire life. We met in college on a snowy February afternoon. He spilled hot cocoa across my open notebook. I should have been furious, but I laughed. That laugh began a story I thought endless. We married 3 years later under autumn leaves. He built me a home filled with laughter. We dreamed of children and growing old together. Then life decided to break me in half. A sudden business trip took him across the ocean. We spoke every night, counting days until reunion. But one morning he complained of a headache. 8 hours later, I got the worst call. By the time I reached him, it was over. I buried him alone, thousands of miles away. And when I came home, I faced worse. Because my family had already decided I was nothing. The flight home was 30 sleepless hours of grief. Every seatbelt click sounded like a door closing. Every announcement felt like a reminder of loss. I stared at strangers and wished Michael beside me. The airport lights burned my tired, swollen eyes. I texted my family when we landed in Portland. I wrote, "My flight lands at 5 p.m. Can someone pick me up from the airport?" Troy, my brother, replied within seconds, "Try Uber." Mom followed with, "Why didn't you plan better?" I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. No one offered to meet me at arrivals. No one offered a hug or even comfort. I typed back, "No worries," hands shaking violently. Inside, my heart was collapsing under silent betrayal. They had watched my life shatter from a distance. The cab ride home cost nearly $80 cash. The driver didn't ask questions, sensing my exhaustion. Every mile took me further from the airport crowd. Every streetlight reflected off the tears on my cheeks. When we turned into my neighborhood, my stomach twisted. I wondered if my family might be waiting there. But the driveway was empty, and the porch dark. Even the key felt heavy in my frozen hands. Inside, the air was cold and lifeless. I had asked Mom to set the heat. She had promised she would handle it yesterday. But promises from my family meant almost nothing now. The kitchen was exactly as I'd left it months ago. Old mail was piled high beside the coffee maker. The refrigerator hummed with nothing but expired condiments inside. Not even milk or bread had been stocked for me. I climbed the stairs with my luggage dragging behind me. Michael's scent was gone from our shared bedroom completely. The bed felt too big, too empty to enter. Instead, I curled into a chair by the window. The street outside glistened from earlier rain. A quiet, uncaring night wrapped itself around the house. I stared at our wedding photo on the dresser. Michael's eyes seemed to ask why I was alone. The next morning brought a cruel, biting cold indoors. I could see my breath when I exhaled slowly. A strange dripping echoed from the kitchen below. I rushed down to find water pouring from the ceiling. A pipe had burst during the recent cold snap. The water soaked into the floor and warped the boards. The drywall sagged dangerously, threatening to collapse onto the counters. I grabbed towels, but it was already too late. I called an emergency plumber for immediate assistance desperately. They said every technician was booked for days. The storm had caused half the city's pipes to burst. The soonest they could come was Tuesday morning. I thought of my parents' warm, dry house nearby. Surely they'd let me stay until this was fixed. I called Troy first, hoping my brother might help. He answered, sounding distracted and slightly irritated with me. I told him the house was flooding badly. He asked if I'd tried other plumbers instead. I reminded him I'd just returned from burying Michael. I told him the heat was gone and unsafe. Could I please stay in his guest room tonight? He said Lisa had crafting supplies all over the room. They also had clients coming for dinner that evening. His voice made it clear he wanted to hang up. I called my parents next, my last fragile hope. Mom answered, her voice already full of excuses. They were hosting bridge club tomorrow and couldn't change plans. Dad's back was hurting, so they needed quiet. She suggested I book a hotel with travel insurance. I wanted to scream but only thanked her politely. When the call ended, the silence felt like a knife. Even strangers had shown me more kindness than my family. As the storm outside strengthened, the power flickered once. I stood in ankle-deep water, shivering and exhausted. My hands were raw from wringing out wet clothes. The air smelled of damp wood and broken promises. I thought of Michael and how he always protected me. And for the first time I felt a spark of rage. Not the kind that fades when you cry quietly, but the kind that plans, sharp and deliberate inside. The first betrayals. The rain had stopped when I reached home, but the cold inside was worse than outside. No one greeted me at the front door. The first no one asked if I was even okay. The rain had stopped when I reached my suitcase into the silent hallway. The cold inside was worse than outside. Family photos stared at me like frozen me at the front door. They showed no one asked if I was even okay. I dragged my suitcase into the silent cup of coffee. Family photos stared at me like frozen ghosts. No hug, no smile that no longer felt real. My sister Emma with fake sweetness and sharp edges. She said the guest room was already taken. No, apparently no sympathy. Her friend had moved in temporarily last month. Her voice dripped with fake sweetness and sharp edges. She had just buried my husband overseas yesterday. Apparently, and she was already pushing me out last month. I asked about Mom and Dad's whereabouts tonight. I had just buried and said they were at overseas yesterday. Dinner with friends, and she was already pushing me out again. Business success. I asked about Mom and Dad's whereabouts. Not even a simple message. Emma smirked. I felt my chest they were at dinner. Disbelief dinner and with anger. Friends. Celebrating some ridiculous, but their absence cut deeper. Not one they call, hadn't just not even a simple. They erased me. I felt and my chest tight, trying to hide it and anger. That night, Michael's I lay in a small motel, but their absence cut deeper. The sheets smelled they like hadn't just forgot cigarettes. They erased me. The air conditioner rattled even trying to hide tired breath. That night, I stared at the ceiling, in a small motel to sleep. The sheets smelled like laugh and kept haunting my mind. The air conditioner was now mixed every tired breath, because I stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep, and I was memories of Michael's laugh kept haunting my mind. The next morning, I drove to my parents' now mixed with bitterness. It was the house I grew up in. Because he would never see how cruel they were. Blue shutters, and I was seeing along the front porch clearly. A place that once felt like I drove to my parents' house. Now it felt like it was the house I grew up in. I rang the bell and waited for answers. Roses along the front. My mother opened the door. A place that once felt like safe shelter. Her eyes scanned me like I was unwanted clutter. I rang the bell and waited for answers. Didn't touch me. My mother opened the door. Everything I dressed as always. Her words were sharp, scanned me like I was almost rehearsed. She said she invited me in but didn't touch me. Not even after I should stand on my own now. Her word was sharp, that they had their own lives, almost rehearsed. It was the coldest welcome I had no excuse for dependency, and it came from the woman who raised me. She said I should stand on my own now. At breakfast, she reminded me that they had their own lives. No one mentioned Malcolm I had ever received. I realized they wanted to erase his memory too. At breakfast, my father barely spoke about business and travel plans. When I no one mentioned Michael that I should even once. It had been only 9 days to erase his memory too. 9 days, father barely they were done pretending to care. When I spoke, this was no longer that I should move on. That it had been only 9 days since study at home. 9 days, his books and they were done pretending to care. His handwriting I knew then this was no longer my family. Still lingered that afternoon, I ran my hands across the desk, trembling slightly. His books were there was something powerful, his handwriting in what he loved. The scent of his cologne I decided on something dangerous. I ran my hands across the desk, me out, trembling back. There was something powerful in touching what he loved. Revenge, I realized, I decided on something dangerous. It can be quiet, to push me out, and deadly precise. But I wouldn't do it. Always said I was sharper than I believed. Revenge, I realized, doesn't have to be loud. Way. It can be quiet. I needed to understand their precise. I needed to see what I was sharper than I believed, and I needed to hold it in my hand in the most painful way. That was when I started making my plan. I needed to understand their weakness. I began by visiting Emma. I needed to see what they valued above all. Her apartment was filled with luxury she didn't earn. That was when I started making lined her couch like trophies. I began by visiting Emma. She bragged about a business investment paying her apartment was filled with luxury she didn't earn, while my designer handbags lined her couch. Every answer she gave was a piece of a puzzle. She bragged about a business she was feeding my future revenge. I didn't let her see this while my mind kept turning. By the time I left, she gave was a piece of a puzzle. Emma she didn't know she was had a shared financial secret. They had money let her see the spark in my venture. Something that could crumble with the right push-up already. And they had kept it from me had a shared financial secret. I smiled to myself. They had money tied up in some fragile venture. I wasn't ready to strike the right push applied, because the best revenge requires perfect timing to work. I smiled to myself, finally feeling some control return. I wasn't ready to strike just yet though, because the best revenge requires perfect timing to work. Plan in motion. The morning after the meeting, I woke early. The house was still wrapped in the hush of dawn. I brewed coffee, its aroma wrapping me like comfort. My mind was sharper than it had been in weeks. Grief had clouded me, but not anymore. Now, every thought was a calculated step forward. I had decided that my silence was my weapon. Let them think I was broken beyond repair. I began with the attic, untouched for years. Michael had kept boxes of documents and old files. Most were from his business ventures overseas. I found bank statements with numbers that stunned me. Michael had been saving more than I realized. Every account was in my name alone. No one in my family knew these existed. That ignorance would be their undoing soon. I contacted his former lawyer in New York City. We met at a discreet little office near Wall Street. He remembered Michael well and offered condolences quietly. When I explained my family's behavior, his jaw tightened. "You don't owe them a single thing," he said. We began drafting documents to secure my financial control. I signed each paper with a steady, deliberate hand. It felt like locking a door they could never open. Meanwhile, I acted as if nothing had changed. At dinners, I smiled faintly and spoke little. My sister bragged about her designer handbags and vacations. My mother complained about the rising cost of wine. They never asked how I was sleeping at night. They never noticed the tired lines under my eyes. That was fine, I wanted them distracted. Their arrogance was my shield in plain sight. One afternoon, I overheard them planning the summer gathering. It would be at my parents' beach house again. I wasn't invited, of course, not officially. But this time, I wouldn't be sitting at home. I had a plan to make an appearance. And I wouldn't come empty-handed to the occasion. I would bring the truth they couldn't bear to face. Truth wrapped in a sting they'd never forget. I visited a printing company in the city center. I handed them a flash drive of carefully scanned pages. They were copies of Michael's letters to me. Some were love notes, others full of business details. One letter explicitly named who should inherit his estate. It was me, entirely without exception or condition. And he had written it 6 months before he died. They printed the letters on thick, elegant cream paper. That night, I sat at my kitchen table alone. I sealed each letter in gold-embossed envelopes. The kind my mother used for wedding invitations. My hands trembled slightly, but not from fear. I was nervous, yes, but more than that, excited. For the first time since his death, I felt strong. Michael's words would speak louder than my own ever could, and my family wouldn't be able to talk over them. I began hearing rumors about my financial situation. My sister told a cousin I was nearly broke. She laughed about me selling jewelry to buy groceries. Every whisper was a lie meant to strip my dignity. But each lie only made my resolve burn brighter. They thought I was cornered, but I was circling them. They had no idea how close the trap was. The beach gathering would be my perfect stage. I spent the next week finalizing legal arrangements. The lawyer assured me the estate transfer was complete. Every asset, property, and account was now locked away. They could demand, beg, or threaten. Nothing would move me. I even had new keys made for the lake cabin. It was Michael's favorite place, and now entirely mine. They would never set foot there again without my permission. That thought alone made me sleep deeply for the first time. The night before the gathering, I packed a small bag. Inside were the letters, my documents, and one photograph. It was of Michael and me on our wedding day. We were laughing, holding each other against the sunset. I wanted that image fresh in my mind tomorrow. Because tomorrow wasn't about hate. It was about justice. I wasn't there to scream or cause a scene. I was there to reclaim the dignity they stole. Before bed, I stood by the window and breathed. The summer air smelled faintly of rain and pine. Michael always said storms washed the air clean again. That night, I dreamed of waves breaking against the shore. In the dream, I stood on the sand unafraid. The storm raged behind me, not ahead. When I woke, I knew the dream was a sign. Tomorrow the storm would come, and I would be ready. The final blow and emotional farewell. The day of the gala arrived with icy rain. My hands trembled, but not from the cold. Inside the grand hall, crystal chandeliers lit everything golden. Wealthy faces smiled, unaware of the storm coming. My family sat at a table near the stage. They were dressed in glittering gowns and sharp tuxedos. They had no idea I was the guest speaker. My name was printed boldly on the program. The host introduced me with warm, careful praise. I walked to the stage, heart pounding in rhythm. Michael's ring felt heavy against my shaking fingers. I took the microphone and looked directly at them. Their smiles faltered the moment our eyes locked. I began with a story about kindness and loss. Every word I spoke painted the truth slowly. The room fell silent, even the glasses stopped clinking. I told them about the husband they never met. I told them how they ignored my desperate calls. I told them how they laughed while I wept. Faces in the crowd shifted with quiet discomfort. Some guests glanced toward my family, frowning in judgment. I spoke of love, betrayal, and unexpected resilience. The sound of my voice carried weight like stone. Tears pricked my eyes, but I did not falter. Then I revealed the charity's true name and purpose. It was named after Michael, my eternal light. Every donation would help widows rebuild their broken lives. Gasps rose as I pointed toward my family's table. I told the truth about their absence at his funeral. I told the truth about their words behind closed doors. They were forced to sit under hundreds of eyes. Every whisper in the room became a dagger to them. My sister's face turned pale as porcelain teacups. My brother shifted, gripping the edge of his chair. They could not interrupt, not with cameras recording everything. I smiled gently, not in anger but in freedom. This was not revenge, this was reclamation of dignity. The applause began softly, then grew into thunder. I stepped away from the microphone, my chest rising. Every clap felt like Michael's hand on my shoulder. After the speech, people came to shake my hand. Some offered partnerships, others simply whispered their condolences. My family left quickly, heads down, avoiding my gaze. I didn't stop them because I didn't need to. They could carry their shame for the rest of time. I had finally put the truth into the light. And the light was something they couldn't put out. I left the gala without looking back once. Outside, the rain had stopped and the air was clear. The night sky opened like a velvet curtain above. Stars shone, scattered like diamonds across the darkness. I walked to the car with steady, calm steps. Michael's picture was tucked inside my small clutch bag. I touched it softly, my heart aching yet steady. The pain was still there, but it had changed. It was no longer a wound, but a scar. In the weeks that followed, letters began to arrive. Some were from strangers, some from old friends. They told me my speech gave them strength. They told me they left toxic families behind too. Each letter was a reminder that pain has purpose. And purpose is the soil where hope can grow. I read them every night before going to bed. Michael's photo stayed on my nightstand beside a candle. One afternoon, I received an unexpected envelope in the mail. It was from my sister, written in shaking handwriting. She apologized, though her words were clumsy and uncertain. She said she couldn't face the truth until now. She asked to meet, but I did not reply. Forgiveness was not something I could give on command. It had to bloom naturally if it ever did. For now, silence was my way of protecting peace. On the first anniversary of Michael's passing, I returned abroad. I visited the quiet cemetery where he lay resting. I brought fresh flowers, white lilies, his favorite bloom. The breeze carried the scent through the still air. I knelt, brushing the grass from his marble stone. My voice trembled as I told him everything. I told him about the gala and the truth. I told him I was learning to live again. Tears rolled freely, but they didn't burn this time. They felt like rain that nourishes a growing tree. I promised him his name would never be forgotten. I promised to keep helping others in his honor. I promised to keep walking forward, even when lonely. Then I placed my hand flat against the stone. For a moment, I swore I felt warmth there. Like his hand was reaching up to touch mine. The sun began to set, painting the clouds gold. I stood, taking one last long look at him. Then I walked away, my steps slow but certain. I didn't need revenge anymore because I had peace. And peace was something they could never take away. Michael had been my home, and I still carried him. Not in my arms, but in my unshaken heart. And that, I realized, was the sweetest victory of all.